Welcome to Energy Frontier, the Wyoming Landscape podcast. Hosted by Dr. Holly Krutka, Executive Director of the School of Energy Resources at the University of Wyoming. The show highlights SER's role supporting our mission to promote energy-driven economic development for the state of Wyoming.
Welcome back, listeners. Today we're joined by Angela Ver Ploeg. She's Senior Director of Corporate Engagement at the University of Wyoming Foundation. She's a graduate of the University of Wyoming. She's been in the state for 21 years and with the foundation for 12 years. And she's done an incredible job of growing industry collaborations here at the University of Wyoming. And that's a role she started in 2021. Here at the School of Energy Resources, we work really closely with Angela and her team, given that it's part of our mission, even in our founding statute, to work with industry. And we also work across the university, the state, national labs, and broadly with anyone who contribute to our mission of advancing energy-driven economic development for Wyoming. So Angela is absolutely in that cohort. We love working with her. And so Angela, thank you so much for joining us today.
Thank you for having me.
So let's start with your background. How did you get to the University of Wyoming? And then we'll make our way to how you got into your current role.
You bet. So I came to the University of Wyoming in 2004 for college and graduated in 2008 and started a career in sales and hospitality sales specifically. Did that for about 5 years prior to joining the University of Wyoming Foundation in 2013. And I was working as a major gift officer representing the College of Health Sciences, the Art Museum, and a little bit of College of Engineering as they needed help, really supporting just a great deal of prospects there. And then in 2021, as mentioned, following representing the College of Health Sciences and the College of Business, I took on this corporate role, which I know we'll dive into a little bit more. So I'll keep it brief on that intro.
Yeah. And that's a new role that created. So I think we do a good job of working with industry at the University of Wyoming, but what you've been able to do is really amp that up and formalize it in a lot of ways. So talk about what does a typical day look like for you as Senior Director of Corporate Engagement at UW, and what's included in the portfolio under that role?
Great question. So a typical day, there is no typical day. So I thought it might be easiest to organize what our activities are into 3 buckets. And so we measure our effort and success on meetings that we secure with companies, the asks that we're making of companies to have a research collaboration with us or a philanthropic opportunity with us, and then securing the funding from those companies. So those are those 3 activities that we really track on a quarterly and an annual basis. And so a day in the life of anybody doing corporate engagement is prepping for any one of those activities or actually executing one of those activities.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. So thinking about SER, obviously we work really closely with industry, but I think what's been interesting to watch as you've taken on this role and you've grown your team is that even industry partners that we've been working with for a long time, you've been able to maybe increase the impact of that collaboration by identifying other needs. So for example, we have a lot of research partnerships with industry. We do all kinds of different things that are to benefit the state of Wyoming. But those companies have, for example, workforce needs, and that all falls in part as part of your portfolio. So you can connect folks or the industry partners with different colleges and different units across the university. So even just amplifying industry partners we already have and their impact across the university is one area that I think creating this role and having you in it has really helped. But also you've been able to find new industry partners to engage with the University of Wyoming. So can you talk about how do you identify and approach potential industry partners that maybe we haven't been working with that much before that align with UW's mission and our research strengths?
That's a fantastic question. And we have a few different ways that we are identifying either partners that have currently been a partner and wanting to strengthen and grow that relationship, or are pretty new or emerging industry partners that we really want to understand how can we grow that partnership. And I would say if you're unfamiliar with development, what a foundation at a university does particularly, I'll just note that when we're working with individual donors, there are some key markers that indicate engagement, willingness to give, interest in giving to the University of Wyoming that we deploy in a pretty similar fashion with companies. But we're also looking at non-financial Things such as advisory board participation, coming to a career fair, the frequency of those activities, speaking on campus, and many more. On the flip side, we're also looking at how do we uncover potential partners that do not have a connection or have a pretty minimal or introductory connection to the University of Wyoming. And we have a couple of tools. We also are working diligently to collect data. We work very closely with our faculty partners. There are so many doorways into the University of Wyoming. Often it's understanding where are they starting from? Are they purely a cold relationship, or is there some warm relationship they already have that we can walk alongside either a faculty partner or a program to help initiate? Or it may be completely introductory, and then we get to do the fun discovery work to see if there's an alignment and a match there.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. I think you've definitely brought some new folks that we've showed around the School of Energy Resources and what we're doing. And there's always a lot of, wow, I didn't know this was happening here. So Can you talk about any concrete recent examples of a successful partnership between UW and a corporate entity and what made that work?
Absolutely. I think truly, and this, Holly, was one of our first trips together, which was so great just for that trip in and of itself, in addition to the story that I'm about to tell. But I like to call out the example of Peabody, because Peabody itself has been a fantastic partner with the University of Wyoming historically. When I came into this role, however, there had been a significant change in leadership, as you know, Holly, having been at Peabody. And in understanding who has historically been supporters of the School of Energy Resources, like first and foremost, use the 80-20 rule. Like, let's go to those that have already given to the University of Wyoming and to your unit specifically to steward those relationships and understand what we can be doing more of. This particular example, we met with the then new CEO who had no clue what the previous investment to the University of Wyoming had been in the diversification of uses of coal. And it was really amazing to sit across the boardroom table from them and talk about all the phenomenal work happening right here in Wyoming where they have assets, and being able to understand how we could help them with where they're at, where their strategy and key focus areas are. And what is great, which is it doesn't always happen this way. Often we do need to facilitate the conversation, but it is a fantastic moment when a partner actually asks you, what more can we be doing to accelerate this work? And that was Peabody in and of itself. And they won just knowing the extraordinary partnership that they had had with the University of Wyoming to date. It was a justification that team needed to fly their senior team out to Laramie, Wyoming within a couple of months of that first visit, and ultimately making a first of its kind at the University of Wyoming, but a income-based gift. So they dedicated a penny per every ton of coal that they sold out of Wyoming to build an excellence fund to help accelerate the great work that was happening here at UW. And even on top of that, the conversation has always been, okay, how do we remain relevant to our current students, that going into a mining sector is a really great career path. So really bringing in our partners from across the campus to understand, one, Peabody is here at the University of Wyoming, and being able to plug them into various opportunities. So not only was there a huge win for the School of Energy Resources, but really mutually a win for both parties, and being able to kind of reignite that relationship and identify some key opportunities that we could work on together.
Yeah. And that was super meaningful for me, obviously, being my former employer and my former colleagues who I have tons of respect for, and having them come here and see what we're doing. I think one of them said to me, I think you're going to do more good for us here and than you could at Peabody. So, but that program that we're using their funding to support, the carbon engineering program, is looking at new ways to use Wyoming coal. And I can tell you that I don't know if we would be able to advance the program in the way we want without their support. And I should also add that we've also received support from the other Wyoming coal miners from what is now Core Natural Resources, was Arch, and Intech, Navajo Transitional Energy Company. They're all supporting us financially. They're working with us on things like using coal char for reclamation. So it's just this really great partnership where we have industry and the university working together. But it's not always that easy. So I'm just curious, especially for newer entities coming in to work with the university or haven't worked with any university a great deal, how do you work with corporate partners and private companies to understand like academia and what we can provide and the research priorities of the university and kind of get everyone on the same page? Because I will just say, having come from the private sector to academia, we can do incredible things in academia. We can come up with new innovations, but it's the time scale is really different than you're used to. The decision-making time scale is different. And we're also kind of trying to change the trajectory of these industries, which you got to take some high risk, high reward shots. So can you talk about what's your approach to get companies on the same page and understand the differences where it's like a mutually beneficial relationship?
Excellent question. There is definitely a delicate balance of honoring the research expertise and the direction that we're going to at the University of Wyoming, and also helping to work alongside our industry partners to help shape the research trajectory and our expertise at the University of Wyoming. And it is a delicate balance. We absolutely want to respect and honor that, just what we're doing at UW, and not having to completely pivot for industry. But it is really, really important that the research that we're doing is relevant. And in particular, with the mission of the School of Energy Resources being energy-driven economic development for the state of Wyoming, I feel like it's such an easy story to tell. So when we are talking with an industry partner and looking for faculty that would be interested in collaborating on a project, it's a pretty comfortable platform for us to be having that conversation, because you have made that a comfortable and easy platform for us to be talking to. But I would say the time scale, that's also a delicate balance. Mm-hmm. And having an understanding, and it truly varies from one company to the next, one topic to the next. I was just having a conversation with an industry partner where it was somewhat of a Goldilocks syndrome, if you will, where, they were saying, we really want to partner with the university to do novel and innovative things that will be novel or will be ready to go in
next
3
quarter.
years.
Yeah, 3 years.
Well, but in 3 years.
Yeah.
Whereas they don't think the things that are ready next quarter, they're stuff that they already have a handle on. So trying to understand where do we put resources in that is appropriate to ask a campus or a company partner to walk alongside and invest in is really an interesting dynamic to help discuss. So it's a fun and also challenging part of this role in particular.
So talk about some strategic priorities for the Office of Industry and Strategic Partnerships that you see over the next few years.
Yeah, and worth noting, I do work at the UW Foundation, and I lead in my role in Office of Industry and Strategic Partnerships. And that itself was formed at the beginning of 2024. So it in and of itself is a fairly new entity, and it is a partnership between the UW Foundation and the Research and Economic Development Division, which is a really extraordinary partnership to have, and our counterparts are very envious of being able to have that kind of collaboration. As far as the strategic focus, so our goal is creating a culture of working with industry at the University of Wyoming. And that's from your faculty, from your staff. And if I could sum up all of the wonderful activities that we're working on into 3 areas, we're wanting to create a more comfortable navigation around agreements with industry, what kinds of agreements exist, when to use what kind of agreement, how to most efficiently use that agreement. We're wanting to increase the efficiency of agreements with industry, truly the time scale that we just talked about. So from identifying a project to being able to kick off that project, decreasing that time because we're building some good systems in place on campus to help communicate across different offices that all need to be involved. And it's very important for them to be involved. And then most important is increasing dollars coming from industry. Mm-hmm. So those are my kind of strategic priorities in a nutshell.
And I think I just want to make this super crystal clear. I mean, because this is something that some people can get confused about because you are at the UW Foundation, but this office and your role, it's not just about philanthropic fundraising.
Correct.
Yeah, it's about creating this like holistic ecosystem where it's just we do a better job of working with industry, of more industry partners, and like both sides are benefiting.
Absolutely.
Is that right? Okay.
And I would add on to that, particularly for companies. It's a really powerful position for us to be across the boardroom table, if you will, with a industry partner and be able to understand their priorities, their strategy as a company without having to table a discussion of saying, I'm with the philanthropic arm of the university, I'm with the research arm, but really just focusing on building that trusting relationship with that partner and having them be able to rely on us to be the relationship manager that helps to navigate all of the processes on campus. At the end of the day, just they want to do a project with us. They want to have impact on this campus. Yes, they care to a certain degree on the hows, but they really are caring about the end result, being able to start a research collaboration or being able to impact a program. And that's what we help to do, which is really powerful. And that's why that partnership between those two entities is really powerful.
Okay. And so this is a pretty new office and a relatively new role for the University of Wyoming, but it does exist at some other universities. And I know you have recently attended like the NACRO conference, which you can remind me what that stands for. I know you've told me many, many times, but can you talk about understanding that broader landscape? Like, where do you see the role of corporate engagement going in terms of higher education more broadly?
That's a great question. So to start, the acronym NACRO stands for the Network of Academic Corporate Relations Officers. And so that is the professional organization for people who do the work that I do. And there are so many different models around the country that exist, but that organization is truly there to help provide a space for information sharing, for encouragement, and to talk about best practices within the industry and with our field. We play a really key and important role. And in particular, higher education is changing. We see that in the news. And being relevant as a university is really going to be the game changer for anybody that comes across on the other side being successful. And where I see our roles being critically important is being able to have that temperature read of what is needed in the industry right now so that we can be developing programs that meet that need, that are really providing relevant opportunities for students to engage in research, faculty to be doing research that is really contributing to industry, truly. And so I feel like we have a phenomenal role to play in that regard, and I'm really honored to be a part of that.
And then on the flip side, what do you think the biggest challenges are to kind of building these like holistic, lasting, mutual, beneficial partnerships between academia and industry?
So two things, both universities and companies can be quite large, and there is a ton of turnover from an industry level. And so being able to maintain the relationship with a person at a company is not enough. It's really ensuring that, and truly on the same token, not just one person at a university. It takes so many people. We have probably 80 people at the University of Wyoming that are industry facing or industry engaged in some form or fashion. That is probably an underestimate, if I'm being honest. And so a challenge in my role is ensuring good communication. I don't always know who is talking to which company. And so making sure when I'm talking to a company that everybody who I think is engaged with that company is aware of what our strategy is moving forward. That can be quite intimidating many days. And then also from an industry perspective, you may have a great conversation with a team at a company and, fast forward 3 months to a year, and that particular team looks different, that composition looks different, and you're having to start not necessarily from ground one, but re-educate people, very similar to that Peabody example of like, this is what your historic engagement has been with the University of Wyoming, because that really, I mean, they're evaluating their industry partnerships, or industry's evaluating university partnerships. And so we have to do more and more to make sure that they know we are not a brand new partner, that we really have a deep relationship with them. So that truly is what is the challenge with managing these relationships.
Yeah, that makes a lot of sense. And even like the same team could, no longer be working on like the Wyoming project. They're working on Angola. And, so
absolutely,
even without turnover, just work can change really fast in industry.
Totally.
So, and I'm just curious. So one of the things that in that answer that I think is really important to highlight is you do a really good job kind of bringing in faculty and staff from across the university. And one of the things that you have to do is kind of understand what people are working on. And you do a really good job, like just talking about some of these technical things, but that you don't have a technical background. So how do you do that?
It's
really impressive.
Well, thank you, Holly, because I'm very self-conscious about the brilliant people I get to share a presentation space with. And my role truly is the facilitation component, but I absolutely have to carry a conversation in an introductory manner to a certain extent. And so I ask questions. I do tend to use the question, what is a societal impact? Mm-hmm. Because particularly if you're a PhD, you are really focused on some pretty micro level details, as you should, of your work. And it's hard for somebody who's not had that background to understand the magnitude of the impact. And so I try to drill into that a bit more and ask questions and be very honest and say, thank you for answering what probably are very elementary questions. And most everyone I work with is actually really quite delighted to work and to explain. And it helps me represent the University of Wyoming well. And I've got so much pride for all the work that we're doing here at UW. So it's a fun exercise, but it doesn't, I have to come up with some talking points that I can use again and again, truly, and memorize them so that I feel comfortable and confident representing the units that I get to.
Good. Okay. So we've already established not a technical background, it was psychology?
Correct.
And so talk about how your background in psychology in your earlier development work, when you were more on the philanthropic fundraising side at the UW Foundation, how did those things prepare you for this role and this in your leadership role and really like building up this new office?
Sure. So I'll just note, I went into a sales career, as I mentioned earlier, and I would say psychology gives you a fantastic foundation for some of the emotional intelligence, understanding that people interact with the world differently and they engage and respond to decision making differently, and having a natural sense of curiosity for how do you navigate a conversation forward. I would say going into sales, where I represented primarily regional, national conferences that were like 3 to 5 years out in some cases, I had to build a long-term relationship. This wasn't a quick transaction. And so it was a long-term, which translated very well to development work, which is asking great questions, being naturally curious, understanding that a decision it's not just copy and paste from one situation to the next, and really enjoying understanding how do we navigate to get to the ultimate goal, the ask that we're wanting to make. And then, as we've been creating this new office, so many people work with corporate engagement in some capacity at any university. Our university is no different. And I think I really tried to apply that same curiosity, that question process to really understand the motivation and to find a win-win, even internally at UW. What are the win-wins that we can have those high five moments, if you will, if we do this really well and really right? My role often is really just being the facilitator and introducing companies to the great people and programs all across our campus. And so I like seeing people win, because we were able to work together. That's the ultimate goal.
And I appreciate all the emotional intelligence comments. And you work with a lot of engineers and scientists, and we might not be as sophisticated in some of that. And so as a follow-up, you also had to help me through some challenges that I had, when we first started working together. You were in a little bit different role back then, more focused on fundraising and philanthropy at the time. But we took a trip together, and I will just say I came from corporate, so hadn't really had any experience on fundraising. And I would say, especially coming from industry to academia, I think it would be really unlikely that you would have experience in every area that you needed. And this is one that I was definitely had basically none. Like I was engaged with when Peabody worked with universities. I was a part of that from the corporate side. And so the idea of asking for philanthropic giving was completely new and something I wasn't at all comfortable with. So would you like to tell the story of what happened on one of our trips and how you had to help me through that and are still helping me today?
Sure. And those who can't engineer, help those who can. That's my motto. And I will say our first visit with a company on that trip, I remember walking out and you're like, you're so good at this. I'm like, I think I spoke maybe 10 minutes of the entire hour-long conversation, but you really did a fantastic job like talking about all the updates. And so all my job is really to help facilitate and help position you in a place where you felt comfortable to talk through that. So no, you did a fantastic job. And this other meeting that you're talking about, again, it's a beautiful thing when a company actually says, "What more can we be doing for you?" And
that happened,
and they did. They asked that. You and I were sitting across the boardroom from one another. I didn't think to prep you on that question, so I'll take all responsibility for that. And I think your response was something to the effect, I think we're okay for right now. We're good.
We don't need anything.
I had the death stare across the boardroom.
Oh, yeah. If you had laser eyes, I would have been toast.
I just kind of cocked my head to the right, probably squinting my eyes. I'm like, what are we? No, that was the time. That was the time to talk about that. But again, you're a lifelong learner, and we got into the car and every visit.
I did. I think I said,
how can I improve?
How could I improve? And you're like, well, if we're here to build this relationship, maybe don't tell them that you're all good. You don't need anything.
Yeah.
I think we're good.
Yes, exactly.
So start there.
Start there, which is hard when you're just starting to know somebody, and then we'll be in a car with them for a few hours. So unfortunately,
it could have gone downhill from there.
It could have gone downhill from there, but that was fantastic. But all kidding aside, you've gotten really comfortable with being able to ask for gifts, which is fantastic. And it is a skill.
I wouldn't say I've gotten comfortable, but I've learned to do it.
You will do it. Yeah, absolutely.
I will do it.
Which is great. Which is fantastic.
Okay. So you recently received a new award from the University of Wyoming Foundation. It's called the Grit Award. I completely support that. I just will say you've really had to work hard to get this office stood up. And it probably took, maybe not the office specifically, but just growing this role, working across the university. And there were times when I watched you where I thought, man, I feel like I would maybe give up. It was really hard. Mm-hmm. And starting something new often can be. So, but you never did. I don't know. It's just really impressive. So talk about, where does your grit come from? What can we learn? And what did it mean to get that award and be recognized by your colleagues?
Well, first, it meant the world to have that award. Interestingly enough, there were a few awards that were being provided that day, and one of which we knew, and we had a colleague who had come in for this meeting that was unbeknownst to her getting an award. So I actually was videotaping her, and my boss is reading what ended up being my award. So that was really kind of nice to have that recorded for not only my colleague, who I ended up also recording her award being provided to her, but I was not at all expecting an award. And so it was really, really amazing. It means a lot to me. Yes. Since fall of 2021, there has been a grind to get us to where we are today, with actually having an office, having the kind of partnership we have with the Research and Economic Development Division and the foundation. really great kudos to John Stark, who leads our foundation, and VP Parag Chitnis, who leads our research and economic development division. They really are the key to why this partnership is up and running. But I would say what kept me going beyond just being stubborn, which I also self-attest, I have a stubborn, I really felt like when I look at other universities that are embarking on the same trajectory of trying to create this holistic corporate engagement office and effort, we were really well positioned as a university to do it and do it well. Mm-hmm. And
why?
Because we just were not too far gone in relation to, like, we did not have corporate engagement offices that were in each unit.
Yeah.
We had people that were doing corporate engagement work, but we did not have decades of corporate engagement offices within a particular unit. Mm-hmm. We also just had some great progress already being made that I saw even prior to an office, with our career services wanting to share data, mm-hmm. research office wanting to share data. When you start to share some of that information and a common goal and purpose, like, it is magic for really doing this work well at a university, and we were almost there. And so on the days where I was like, this is a lot and could totally do a different role and be really, I'm sure, very happy, I was just like, God, I have to get this to where I know it can be, because we're so close. And we are. I think there's still work to be done for sure, but I am just really delighted to be very confidently able to say we have an Office of Industry and Strategic Partnerships, and the internal partners that make that office the office.
I think sometimes when you see that potential, it can help supplement, mm-hmm. but you do have that grit. Because
thank you.
Seeing the potential only takes it so far. So obviously the University of Wyoming, we are a land grant institution, School of Energy Resources. We'll double down. Everything we do is focused on helping the state of Wyoming and its energy sector. But how are you working to ensure Wyoming-based businesses are part of partnerships here at UW and really focus on that land grant mission and helping the state?
Absolutely. And we do a lot of work beyond energy as well. To focus on this question, okay. I'm going to focus on SER specifically, just to provide some examples.
And it's our podcast.
It's the podcast. So, and I'll just, let's be relevant to the podcast that we are. But we do work with Wyoming-based companies, and we also have colleagues, depending on the size of the company and purpose of the company, that colleagues across the campus that work specifically with those industries as well. But as far as the work that we're doing to ensure that those companies feel a part of UW, ironically, a lot of it may require traveling even outside of the state. So we mm-hmm. do have fantastic asset oil and gas in the Powder River throughout the state, but a lot of those companies' headquarters are not in the state of Wyoming. So making sure we have face time with those that are decision makers, that are really lining out what the strategy for the next 1, 3, 5 years are, and ensuring that they know that SER is here mm-hmm. for them, what our mission is and purpose. Even those partners that we have worked with, it's always fantastic when we can have an industry partner come to campus and actually see what all of the beautifully articulated bullet point content in a brochure might say, or on our website might say, but actually to be here and talk with the people and understand the kind of work that we can do with a company partner is really amazing to witness and see their eyes open and really be able to understand their challenges and be able to connect them with people and programs at UW that can help really create solutions for those.
So what initiatives are you most excited about right now that you think could have a real impact on students or the state, which are, the two areas where we really are responsible for providing the most benefit?
This is really hard. I feel, and if we focus on School of Energy Resources specifically for this question, it's still hard. And the reason I've become, it's this kind of funny response that I say when I am talking with companies. And they're asking, what are we doing in a particular name the topic? And I say, well, we have a center for that. That's become like this something we do.
Yeah, we do.
SER does. And that being said, there is not a single center that doesn't have both faculty and students that are working on important work that's relevant to industry. I would say the things that are in my immediate have some significant defined goals for partnerships and raising dollars for those partnerships currently. We have our carbon capture conversion, so our coal to products work. There is some significant next steps that are really giving us an opportunity to be achieving that goal of having a high volume, maybe not full replacement, but diversification of coal in the state of Wyoming, which is obviously really important to our state, our livelihood as Wyomingites. And then we also have a new multidisciplinary advanced stimulation lab, which is a partnership with our Energy and Petroleum Engineering Department. SCR plays a key role in that, and that will be focused on enhanced primary recovery, which I think is a very interesting topic for us to be exploring and will be increasingly more relevant to both our Wyoming partners, but beyond. I'm very fascinated to see the work that we're doing in critical minerals as well. I think that also can have a significant impact in our state and our livelihood as Wyomingites. And then lastly, some of the work we're doing with the Maori and really, again, ensuring that Wyoming is a powerhouse player in the energy sector for years to come. So and there's many more.
I know. I'm just thinking about all the others: produced water, air quality. There's just 3D viz. Okay, we're just going to stop, but just know there's a lot going on. There's so many ways to partner, so many topics to partner on, and we're really responsible by statute to work with industry and understand what we should be working on to help Wyoming industries for the long term. So I think the simple way to say it is, Angela's here in this role. She's a great conduit working with her and her team to understand all the resources across campus and the University of Wyoming broadly and how we can work with industry. So reach out to her, reach out to us here at SER, and we'll make sure that we can build lasting collaboration. So Angela, I just want to commend you for all you've done to help us across the university. Your alma mater, you're making a difference. You make a difference for us here at SER, and really appreciate the exchange I've seen and all the support we're getting. I think our partnerships with industry have never been stronger.
Well, thank you. And you are a strong partner that makes that work possible.
Well, thank you. So our last question, we just use to kind of highlight this incredible state that we live in. So it's different. It's not about corporate partnerships with the university. It's actually, and I know you've listened to the podcast, so you know what the question is, but
I'm still not prepared to answer it, but yes.
It's the hardest question. Yep. So yes, I expected you to be prepared, but I know it's a tough one. So what is your favorite place to be in Wyoming or to visit in Wyoming?
Okay, I think I've made up my mind. I yearly, and I had a wonderful colleague and friend who took me on this hike, and it's the Medbo Peak hike just west of us. And it was the first time I took it, and I was intimidated to take it. And she's like, I will take you anytime. And it's, I would say, almost a spiritual experience for me. It's doing something hard. It's extraordinary to see the views from the top. It's a reflective experience for me. And I was just, I passed that on. I've probably gone at least once a year, if not more. And I often take new people who have never done that hike before. But there is something just incredible about the process of that hike, the beauty from the top. And then when you're walking alongside the lakes, it's just an extraordinary experience and reminds me why I made the decision 21 years ago or more to come to this wonderful state of Wyoming.
And how long does that hike take?
4.5 if you're a moderate to prepared hiker. 6 hours if we need a little bit more breathing room, which I'm happy to take all hours and all skill levels. So.
Perfect. Okay. Well, thank you so much
for
everything you do for the University of Wyoming, for us here at the School of Energy Resources, and thank you for doing the podcast.
Excellent. Thank you.
Thank you for listening to this episode of Energy Frontier, the Wyoming Landscape, the podcast that highlights the School of Energy Resources at the University of Wyoming. You can expect a new episode of Energy Frontier every other Wednesday on Apple Podcasts, Spotify, or wherever you listen to podcasts. See you next time.